Project 4, Task 1, creating your work-based learning plan. For this task, you're required to start planning for your upcoming sessions. You will develop 2 work-based learning plans. Each will have 3 sequential sessions based on units of competency that you analysed back in Task 2. You will only be delivering one of these work-based learning plans, but you must show evidence of planning 2. So let's go through and have a little bit of a talk about what a work-based learning plan would include. So it should include links to different units of competencies, perhaps even skill sets. And if you're not sure what a skill set is, then please ask your trainer or contact student support. But basically, it's a group of units of competencies to achieve an outcome. It should include what consultation was undertaken with stakeholders. Given that this is a work-based learning plan, then it should include consultation with maybe other departments within the organisation, maybe a supervisor or a team leader or a manager, maybe a training department. So have a think about what kinds of consultation you would undertake in a rule-based setting. I think one of the things that's really important here is that you, as you're completing this, don't think of this as an assessment task. Instead, think of this as a real work-based learning plan. If you can think about somebody who would benefit from this plan that you're putting together. Your role as a trainer assessor is to sometimes pull together these plans, not just deliver and assess. So try and think of somebody that's real, because it's much easier to write the plan about a real situation than, say, for instance, something that you're making up. From there, you should talk about the learning outcomes required in the plan, the mode of delivery. So is it going to be face-to-face? Is it online? Is it via distance? Is it one-on-one? Is it group? So think about your mode of delivery and what sort of specialist support might be needed for your learners or learner group, particularly if you say you've got somebody or a group of people with literacy issues or technology issues. There may be some support that's required around that. Think about the training sequence and time frames. Like, what order are you going to do things in? Are you going to start with the knowledge and then go to the practical? Are you going to start with the practical first and maybe then follow up with some knowledge? Are you going to check how much experience they've got beforehand? That might also drive how deeply you get into the knowledge aspects, or you might get them to perform the task first and then look at self-correction through that coaching process or learning process. So there's a lot of different ways that you could do this, and it's going to be dependent upon what you're trying to achieve and what the learner's needs are. So it's important that you really think about who that person is and what the best approach is for them. You also need to consider what learning activities you're going to use to reinforce any of the learning activity outcomes. That could be things like PowerPoints, videos, quizzes, activities where they're looking at examples maybe of something that was done correctly versus something that wasn't done correctly. And those learning activities are really important because that's how we bring learning to life. Therefore, what resources do you need based on those activities? Are there any legislative or regulatory requirements relevant to the learning outcome? And any organisational policies and procedures that, again, relevant to the learning outcome. You'll find those 2 questions around legislative and organisational policies and procedures actually come up in quite a lot of the units of competency for this course, if you haven't already noticed. Please don't think that you've got to write something different. It's pretty much the same responses for all of them. But this one also does need to tie back to that session that you're actually delivering. And then there's also the risk assessment and safety considerations for you as the trainer who will be presenting this course in upcoming tasks. So what sort of risk assessment do you need to do of the learning environment? and what sort of safety considerations do you need to brief the person on before at the beginning of the session in the intros part. And there's prompters in the session plan for that. Just got to remember you have a duty of care as the trainer delivering these particular sessions to make sure that it is safe for the learner and for yourself and any other participants that are actually involved. So you need to make sure that these templates are fully completed, and it's good practice for you to actually submit these assessments before you get around to the delivery component, which is in upcoming tasks. So in other words, make all your planning, ensure all of your planning's all done and is done fully and submitted before you actually come and present those sessions. Let's have a look at the template that you need to fill in and we've provided to help you to do so. This template goes for quite a few pages, so there is a bit in it, but you are starting to put together your plans for delivering these sessions. So it is important that you're starting to dig in and get a little bit deeper with your understanding of the session and what you're trying to achieve. So in this aspect, the learning plan, so what is the topic? And your topic might be kind of broad or it could be very specific. It doesn't really matter, it's up to you. I used in an earlier video the example of improving communication skills. You'll see here we're going to break that down into 3 separate sessions a little bit further. Communication skills is quite broad, and in each of the sessions we'll break that down in a bit more depth. The supervised hours, the amount of training needed to meet the learning objectives. So how many hours face-to-face are you going to have with this particular learner or this group of learners? It might be 3 30-minute sessions, or it might be 3 1-hour-long sessions. And then what time is needed between the sessions? So that way there's time for them to put into practice the things that they've learnt and be ready for the next amount of learning that they're about to undertake. The unsupervised learning hours, how many hours are they required to do any maybe pre-reading or any practice back in the workplace or any preparation between each session? And it's a good idea to write it down. Pre-reading, 2 hours. Workplace tasks, 4 hours. And you might even put what those workplace tasks are. So if I go with communication, it might be to conduct 3 toolbox talks over the course of the next week. So be a little bit specific with those hours. Don't just put what the hours are, but give us a little bit of a breakdown of what they're required to do in those hours. Always write these plans as if somebody else is going to have to take over. That's good practice in anything that you do with regards to training and assessing. They should be transparent enough for someone else to pick it up and go, okay, I can step in and take over from this trainer or assessor because I can see what their plan and what their intent was. The training records, so what kind of training records are required for completion? It might be an attendance sheet or a completion certificate. There could be a formal or an informal assessment, maybe a quiz if it's informal, that actually will be saved on that person's file or back in HR or in the training department, whatever, again, your workplace practices are. So always think of this back on your own workplace practices. So this is where we're going to start breaking down those 3 sessions. So for me, session 1, I might do my first session, because the overall topic is communication. My first session might be on communication styles. I'll have a session duration in there, remembering each of our sessions need to be a minimum of 30 minutes, and my learning outcome. What should people be able to know and do at the end of this session? So there should be a learning outcome that states what they need to understand, the knowledge aspect. So mine might be at the end of this training session, you will understand the different communication styles and what they mean. I'll then have a performance outcome. At the end of this training session, you will be able to demonstrate how to apply at least 3 communication styles for different situations. So I've got a knowledge aspect in my learning outcome, and I've got a performance aspect in my learning outcome. I then am going to put what unit of competency this particular topic relates to, and that's where earlier I suggested you have to go to training.gov and find a specific unit of competency, and in here you will put the unit code and the title. If you're finding that still difficult, don't forget to ask for some assistance from Foresight's Training. Our student support team are there to help you. The delivery method, how will this be delivered? Face-to-face, online, e-learning, via distance? Will it be a coaching session or a group-based session? There's some of the things that you can put in there. Who's your target learner? We've already written about them in the previous task, so we can really just carry some of that information down into this area here. Mode of delivery and learning environment also support the delivery method. Your learning activities, in this case, I would get them to do a quiz maybe on learning styles to identify what their communication style might happen to be, because learning styles and communication styles can be closely linked. From there, I'd look at what learning resources I might provide. A PowerPoint. The quiz would actually be a resource as well. There might be a short video or a TED talk that I've found that I think might be useful in this instance as well. And I might have some case study scenarios so that way we can throw around some different situations and people can talk about what sort of communication style would be needed in a range of different situations. The stakeholder consultation, I might have spoken to their manager, the training team, their supervisor, their peers. So anybody who you may have spoken to while you were planning this session. I mean, if somebody was sent to me for a bit of communication training, I would suggest there's probably a reason for that. So going back and having a chat to their manager or supervisor, I might get a feel for the context and what specific areas I might need to target that training to. Specialist support we've discussed in the previous video, and also those legislative and organisation policies and procedures. Then you'll fill in session 2 and session 3, which basically have the same content, but in session 2 I might talk about how to improve my written communication. Session 3 might be about my verbal communication. So they're just some examples that I've given you. But it could be quite different for each of you depending upon the topics that you select based on the knowledge and your experience as trainers and assessors moving forward. So I'd just like to say, don't forget, if you need any help in this area, don't forget to contact student support or ask your trainer assessor. You'll have a little bit of time to work with this. And it's good to have a look at other people's session plans as well to see how they're developing that material. Just a final point, please make sure that this is submitted before you get to the upcoming topic where you need to conduct these particular sessions. Your assessor will want to review your planning for these sessions while you're actually conducting each of those sessions. So I hope that's helped, and we look forward to receiving your submission.